Hi, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get straight to our top story. Big developments today from the Donald Trump camp. Late today, the president-elect's former campaign rival, Dr. Ben Carson, confirmed to Fox's Neil Cavuto that he has been offered a position in Trump's cabinet. Also, in a dramatic twist today, Mr. Trump signaled that he is unlikely to pursue a criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton. A short time ago, I spoke with incoming White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. So, Reince, President-elect Donald Trump today said that he was probably not going to pursue prosecution, extended prosecution of the Clintons, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, maybe even the Clinton Foundation. Then there was some discussion with the New York Times. It's a little bit foggy. Will he and will you and will the administration pursue a special prosecutor to prosecute the Clintons?
Well, look, I mean, that's first of all, we don't know where all the evidence is going to lead. But what President-elect Trump was saying was that he would rather look forward instead of backwards, and that his eyes right now are looking through the windshield, not the rearview mirror. And so that was the point he was making, and that, look, he's not going to spend his time sitting around thinking about how he's going to prosecute Hillary Clinton. He's going to think about the future of America for all Americans that are out there. That's where his focus is, and that's really what he's saying. Now, I'm sure if something comes around that is some kind of, bomb that we don't know about, we'll have to take a look at it. But his point is he's looking forward to leading this country. He's not looking to, further injure the Clintons, but he's got the right attitude about leading America.
So the investigation will continue. As of right now, he'll let the investigation play out and wait to see what evidence comes forward before he decides whether to further prosecute or special prosecutor recommendation.
I think that's fair, but he's also saying, as far as he's concerned, he's moving on. Now, there are congressional investigations going on that I would assume will continue to go on, but he's saying, as far as he's concerned, it's time to move forward and heal America and lead.
Okay. So there have been meetings. Yesterday, there were meetings with television executives, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, and CNN. And then today, there was a New York Times meeting specifically for the New York Times. Now, as high profile, how did New York Times score a one-on-one interview with Donald Trump, and on the record for that matter?
Well, first of all, the meeting yesterday was important to start building relationships again in the media. Obviously, we don't feel like we've been treated very fairly by the media, and I think most people watching would probably agree. But you do have to try to heal and move forward and build relationships so that things can get better, or at least a little bit more fair. As far as today, you got to look at it as like your hometown paper. My hometown paper is the Kenosha News, and I love the Kenosha News. It's something that's part of my life every day. It just so happens that the New York Times is a massive organization, but that's his hometown paper. And I think that's the reason why he felt it compelled to just give them an opportunity to ask him questions. And he did really, really well. He did a fantastic job.
All right, Reince, yesterday you guys met with the network executives. I was talking about that earlier. Over the weekend, though, on the Sunday shows, you sat down with Meet the Press with Chuck Todd. And New York Times tweeted this after that meeting. They said, quote, this is a tweet from NBC News. NBC News tweeted this, and here's the quote. Can you rule out a registry for Muslims? Asks Chuck Todd. Quoting you, now, I'm not going to rule out anything, says Reince Priebus on Meet the Press. Now, before we have you weigh in, here's what actually went down on Meet the Press. Watch.
Can you equivocally rule out a registry for Muslims?
Look, I'm not going to rule out anything, but I wouldn't. We're not going to have a registry based on a religion.
So you clearly said you're not going to have a registry based on religion, yet they tweeted out almost looking like you said you're not going to rule out a Muslim registry. Right. Is this some of the bias that you talked about with the network executives yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the case. I mean, President-elect Trump has been talking about a standard that is very reasonable but firm, in that if you come from a state that is harboring or training terrorists, or from a region that's harboring or training terrorists, then your immigration status or your ability to enter the country will be temporarily suspended until a better vetting system is in place. It has nothing to do with blanket restriction based on religion. I've been very clear about that. But here's the problem. So has President-elect Trump. I mean, it's been since June that this position has been articulated every single month through 3 debates, and here we are today continuing to talk about a registration based on race. And all we're saying is it would be nice if after repeating something 50 times, you wouldn't get the same question within, again, a misrepresentation in a tweet. So we've been clear. And I think the American people spoke on November 8th. They were tired of it, and Donald Trump won in an electoral landslide.
Mm-hmm. Also, and let's take that one step further. Today with the New York Times, you know, this alt-right controversy, this alt-right meeting, and Donald Trump has disavowed the alt-right a couple of times. And in fact, he did a couple of times in this New York Times meeting, yet it keeps coming up. Can you explain to us, explain to our viewer what the alt-right controversy is and where Donald Trump is on that?
Yeah, I mean, it just keeps coming up because it seems like this is the type of thing that the media loves to talk about, even though we keep saying we disavow it, we want nothing to do with it, we don't like it, we don't condone it, we want nothing to do with it. I mean, by name, by parade over the weekend, by persons that we don't like and don't want to be a part of. I mean, I don't know how many different ways and different twists and turns we can say we want nothing to do with it before people will just stop asking the same dumb question.
But Ryan, say we're doing in the New York Times interview. I was watching the tweets. They were live tweeting the interview or the meeting, and there were several questions on the alt-right kept coming up after Donald Trump disavowed it 1 or 2 times.
Well, that's true. And then reporters may have come in late and then gone right back to the question that was already answered during the first part of the meeting. You know, look, we continually disavow. We will always disavow these folks. But it also is unfair to constantly go to any interview and answer the same 10 questions every single time so that they can keep perpetrating the same themes in these stories. So we want nothing to do with it. We want to move forward, and we want to lead.
All right. On the transition, let's move to the transition. Paul Ryan sent a letter today to President Obama saying basically stop with easing the sanctions on the Iranians. Stop with the Iran nuclear deal. Let the incoming president-elect handle that when he becomes president. Number one, do you want to weigh in on that request?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with what Paul Ryan's saying. Let President-elect Trump deal with Iran because that deal is a total train wreck, and everybody knows it. And anything that we can do to get rid of it, we will. Now, there's parts of it that may be very difficult to get out of, but we're going to take a fresh look at it, put fresh eyes on that deal. And I can assure you, if anyone can renegotiate that deal or do something about it to make it better for the American people and not start a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, it's going to be President-elect Trump.
All right. What about anything else? Anything else you want to, any other requests of the president to just leave alone, just leave the keys to the door as he leaves the White House? Don't mess with any of these other policy initiatives?
Well, they've actually been fairly cooperative in regard to not appointing positions that don't need to be appointed, and they've been cooperative with the transition. But I would just say that, you know, if you look at what's happening in the transition, you have a president that's coming in, that's talking about bringing America together, that's working with people across the aisle, that's talking to our current president, that's taking the steps to interview the best and brightest people in America, and you're going to be seeing appointments that are going to make you very proud of where this president is taking the country, and we can't wait for the future. All
right, Reince, thank you so much. Reince Priebus, everyone, Chief of Staff of President-elect Donald Trump. And Reince, have a great Thanksgiving to Sally and the family. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, too.
Next on the Rundown, reaction from both sides to our interview with Reince Priebus. And later, even as Donald Trump says he won't pursue a case against Hillary Clinton, she may not be off the hook. Our Is It Legal team will analyze. Stay tuned. In the Impact segment tonight, reaction to our interview with Reince Priebus, the incoming White House Chief of Staff. Joining us now from Washington, David Goodfriend, former Deputy Staff Secretary to President Bill Clinton, and here in studio, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth. We'll start with you, David. Your thoughts on, we went through a wide range of topics, and we started with whether or not there'll be a prosecution of Hillary, Bill, and or the Clinton Foundation going forward. And my takeaway was that it's not over just yet. Your thoughts?
Well, I think Mr. Priebus left the door open to additional facts that might come to light through congressional investigations, which I assume, based on the statements of Congressman Chaffetz and others, will continue. It seems to me as though the Trump folks are trying to have it both ways. They want to say what is politically expedient. We'll look forward and not go back. But at the same time, they want to placate their core supporters who want some sort of investigation to go forward. And I would just point out that all the discussion about what a President Trump would do sort of obfuscates the reality that the president really should not be involved in law enforcement. That's sort of a bedrock principle. It's James Comey at the FBI, it's the Department of Justice, and it's these members of Congress. So I also think, though, one thing that I wish you would have asked, I'm sorry, Eric, you're a good guy, and I like you. I just wish you would have asked, what about these accusations of conflicts of interest right now in the Trump organization, where he's using the perch of president-elect to help his own businesses?
David, can we just stay on the topic? So we brought you on to react to what Reince Priebus said.
I know, but I'm saying I wish you would have talked about that.
Listen, David, we had a wide-ranging interview. We talked about the Clinton prosecution. We talked about the alt-right movement. Lisa, let me ask you this on the alt-right movement. Donald Trump several times disavowed the alt-right movement with the New York Times, yet he was asked again and again and again what's going on here.
Well, I think it's obviously a narrative that both the left and the mainstream media are trying to drive. I mean, they did that with Steve Bannon. They're trying to do it with Senator Jeff Sessions as well, and they also did it with Donald Trump throughout the campaign. If you remember, Hillary Clinton even took a step so far as to try to compare Donald Trump or tie him to the KKK in that ad that she ran. So this is obviously a smear tactic by the left, and what the left does is they do this, and they do this demagoguery because they don't have any issues. And clearly the Democratic Party right now is reeling with the shellacking that they received at the election. They weren't anticipating losing to Donald Trump. They certainly weren't anticipating for Republicans to keep the House and the Senate as well. And so this is the smear tactics that are typical of the left because they don't have any ideas to offer the country.
David, can you imagine if you have a few minutes with the incoming president of the United States and you ask him repeatedly whether he's going to disavow the alt-right movement? I mean, there's so many pressing issues to ask the incoming president. I can think of 100, and alt-right would be 150th.
Well, I think what Mr. Priebus said is that they want to try to unify the country and move forward. And I think that's a laudable goal, and I think that's what every American, whether or not you voted for Donald Trump, every American ought to be rooting for that. Part of what that means is that the president-elect reaches out to groups that didn't vote in large numbers for him. I mean, the 92% of African Americans, for example, did not vote for Donald Trump. Does he reach out to them in an active way and say, I want to be your president too? Or does he not attempt to build those bridges?
Disavowing this group several times, that's not good enough?
That's not what I said, Eric.
Well,
I think that he can move past.
But you kind of said
I'm telling you, you move
past.
Well, move past this, the Steve Bannon controvery because he was part of the alt-right movement. Let's move past it.
But see,
have the president-elect talk to.
How can you possibly paint Steve Bannon as part of the alt-right movement?
I will tell you because
that is just egregious. I can't.
No. I mean, if you look at Breitbart News and what he headed up Breitbart News. I'm not making this up, but these are all facts.
Clearly, he was.
Breitbart News was.
Yeah, he did head up Breitbart News. That doesn't put him as part of the alt-right movement.
Here's the thing, but David's talking. But hold on, David. No, hold on. But David's talking. Hold on, David. David's talking about the fact that Donald Trump has reached out to different demographics of people. But this is also what the left wants to do. They want to put everyone in buckets, and you're this and you're that. What Donald Trump ran was an all-inclusive message of talking about making the economy better, making America great again. Things that are going to affect every American, regardless of race, regardless of sex. But this is what the left does. They demagogue. They try to break the country apart. There's no unity in the Democratic message.
I need to jump in. We're up against the hard break. I apologize. Lisa and David, thank you very much for heated debate. Directly ahead, the head of the NAACP hammering Donald Trump over race issues. But is it the organization itself that's actually out of touch with minorities? Right back with that debate. Joining us now to analyze from Las Vegas, Niger Innis, national spokesman for the Congress of Racial Equality, and from Washington, radio talk show host Jamila Bey. Mr. Innis, I'm going to start with you. So the BET founder, Robert Johnson, says, give Donald Trump a chance, yet the NAACP says, hold on, he's not going far enough. Your thoughts?
My thoughts is, my God, he just got elected. He's still in a transition process and putting his team together. We absolutely should give him a chance. The fact is that a number of African Americans, close to 15% of black males, voted for Donald Trump. Many more voted with their behinds by staying home because they recognize that the virtual monopoly that the Democratic Party and far-left ideology has had on the black community has not worked over the last 50 years, and we need to try something different, and that Donald Trump's pitch of what do we have to lose, and the fact that we have a lot to gain in terms of economic revitalization of our inner cities, school choice, et cetera, things that have been actively blocked by the far left, and unfortunately many in the Democratic Party, including the NAACP, the leadership of the NAACP nationally, has not worked. And so I agree completely with Bob Johnson, and I agree with President Obama. We absolutely should give President-elect Trump an opportunity.
Ms. Bay, do you want to rebut that?
You know, I can't rebut it. It's fact. It's true. Give him a chance. But I want to also point out, Donald Trump didn't just decline to meet with the NAACP, the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization. He also declined to meet over the past summer when the National Association of Black Journalists had their conference jointly with the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. Donald Trump is not going to where black people are. Donald Trump needs to talk to broader audiences, many of whom are going to be the 92% of African Americans who did not vote for him. He cannot simply go to his buddy Bob Johnson, another media guy,
I'll let Mr. Ennis respond. But Ms. Bay, didn't Donald Trump go to some of the cities that, frankly, most people said he shouldn't even bother? He went to Detroit. He spent time in Michigan. He spent time in Wisconsin.
When you look at
he spent time in places where there's a large African American community that typically a Republican wouldn't go to.
I do not disagree that the man flew his gilded jet and landed it in Detroit. He did not talk to black Detroiters. He did not talk to poor Detroiters. He talked to the people who showed up at his rally, who came from, other places, including Chicago. He did not talk to the people who live in those places that he says are wastelands of
Mr. Ennis, is there any indication of that?
That's actually factually not true. Donald Trump, during the campaign, absolutely went to Detroit, and he spoke to multiple audiences. And he spoke to predominantly white audiences and talked about the importance of economic revitalization and bringing in a sense of order in the black community. And he spoke to black audiences, led by Dr. Ben Carson and others in Detroit. He went to Cleveland Black Church. I was with him in a black church in Cleveland.
The church in Cleveland, where many of the people who are members of the church didn't show up. My friend.
Oh, that's not true. That's nonsense. The audience was predominantly black.
And look,
I understand.
Guys, hold on. Ms. Bay, finish the thought.
He went to showing up in a black church. Look, I don't go to a black church. I don't go to any church. There are places that people can go to where you're going to take some heat, you're going to take some slings and arrows, and you say, I can lead this country, and I'm going to show you. I ain't afraid of you. Bring your issues, and I'll deal with them.
I got to leave it there. You guys, very heated debate. Great. Jamila, Niger, thank you so much. Coming up, the left demanding Donald Trump denounce the alt-right movement and the alleged threats from it. But are the fears overblown? That debate, moments away. In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, a new pile-on against Donald Trump. The latest attack comes after a conference held on Saturday in Washington where about 200 white nationalists gathered to celebrate his victory.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
As you can see, some attendees gave the Nazi salute amid general applause. That speaker also filled his speech with anti-Semitic remarks and cited Nazi propaganda in its original German. Today, in an interview with the New York Times, Trump was asked whether he condemned the weekend alt-right conference in Washington, and Trump replied, quote, I disavow and condemn them. Joining us now from Washington, Democratic strategist Julian Epstein, and with us in studio, Jack Kingston, former senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Julian, I'm going to start with you. Okay. I condemn and disavow. Now, how much more do you need to hear?
Well, when it comes to things that Donald Trump really doesn't like, whether it's the protesters or whether it is the Hamilton play where the vice president was called out, or whether it's news reporting he doesn't like, Donald Trump takes to Twitter right away and denounces it in forceful terms. When it comes to kind of white supremacists and white nationalists, whether it's David Duke or whether it's this latest incident, who happen to be supporting Donald Trump, there's a kind of mealy-mouthed nature to it.
I condemn and disavow.
3 days later,
I condemn and disavow.
The point, Eric, is that he sends his spokesman people out to give these ambiguous disavowals, and it's not until he's cornered.
He said it.
It's not. But Eric, here's the point you're missing. Here's the point you're missing. It's not until he's cornered by the press where he is forced into having to disavow it. But until that point, he spends days kind of dancing around it, as he has done every time white supremacy has touched his campaign.
Mr. Kingston, Nicole Wallace calls herself a Republican strategist, said that there's a blurred line between white supremacists and Donald Trump's base. Is that a fair assessment?
No, it's not a fair assessment. What we're seeing now is the left and their allies in the media desperately trying to find traction after the biggest shellacking that they've had in modern history. You know, where was this indignation when MoveOn.org, very left-wing group, disrupted the Trump rally violently in Chicago last spring? And that's a group that President Obama has given a warm hug to because they've endorsed him. And where was their indignation when other groups were doing the same sort of thing? If you think about Black Lives Matter, which advocates criticism and activism against police, and yet President Obama meets with them. Where was the left saying, hey, that's not really a good idea? And what about the 71 protesters in Portland who were absolutely arrested for breaking the law? No word from the left about, hey, Hillary, President Obama, why don't you back off this crowd?
Hang in there. Julian, you didn't like hearing Donald Trump say it to the New York Times. How about when he was interviewed by 60 Minutes, he looked directly in the camera and said this?
They're harassing Latinos, Muslims.
I am so saddened to hear that, and I say stop it. If it helps, I will say this, and I'll say it right to the camera, stop it.
Julian, how much more evidence do you need that the man is disavowing the alt-right movement and the bigotry that goes along with it?
I think it's good that he makes those statements. I think those are very positive. I think what he said to the New York Times today was very positive. To the point about denouncing violence on the left, I think most of us on the left have denounced the fringe groups that do practice those violence. They say we immediately denounce them and say we don't want to be associated with them. The difference with Donald Trump is, and you know, in terms of the shellacking that Congressman Kingston refers to, remember, he lost the popular vote by 1 to 2 million votes, and he still has 60% of the public that thinks he's unqualified to be president. So he doesn't exactly have a mandate here. But in terms of this, there has been a context during the campaign. Donald Trump retweeting tweets from white supremacists, questions about the new Attorney General and his history of deprecating remarks towards the NAACP.
Somebody would have to ask,
the point here is that, Jack, if I can just finish the point, and I'll let you go.
Okay, Julian, I just want to ask you about the tweet that Dixon, the cast leader for Hamilton, who referred to women as hoes. He referred to women as hoes, and there was no denouncement on the left and said, oh, isn't the cast from Hamilton cute? Aren't they wonderful? Aren't they exercising their First Amendment rights?
I think if you ask anybody on the left if they would disavow that, I think they would say yes. And again,
but why aren't they being proactive?
You're getting, well,
they should be proactive.
But Jack, you know, you keep getting off the point when we're talking about a history of Donald Trump retweeting white supremacist tweets.
He does not. What are you talking about?
The tweet with Hillary Clinton and the Star of David over a pile of money, that came from a white supremacist organization.
I don't remember him calling people deplorable or super predators.
Okay, but you just asked me for an example, and I just gave you an example.
You need to take those words back.
Jack, if you just listen for a second rather than trying to interrupt me. So there's a history of that, and the point here is that when white supremacist groups come out and actively support him, it frequently takes him days, if not weeks.
I have to go, Julian.
For him to actually disavow, and he doesn't do it until he's ultimately cornered.
I'd like to see President Obama.
I need to go, gentlemen. I'm going to leave it right there. But, man, if you had to disavow every single statement that someone says, you spend more time disavowing than creating policy, running the country. Up next, Donald Trump says he won't actively pursue criminal charges against Hillary Clinton. But does that mean she's off the hook? Or is it legal team? Takes a hard look at that when we come right back.
Factor, the #1 cable news show for 16 years and counting.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. And in the Is It Legal segment tonight, Donald Trump dialing back on his campaign promise to investigate Hillary Clinton. Here's what incoming White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus said on The Factor earlier tonight.
He's not going to spend his time sitting around thinking about how he's going to prosecute Hillary Clinton. He's going to think about the future of America for all Americans that are out there. That's where his focus is, and that's really what he's saying. Now, I'm sure if something comes around that is some kind of, bomb that we don't know about, we'll have to take a look at it. But his point is he's looking forward to leading this country. He's not looking to, further injure the Clintons.
Joining us now to analyze our Is It Legal team, Lise Wheel and Kimberly Guilfoyle. Lise, your thoughts? We heard him say, at least Reince Priebus, at least leave the door open to further prosecution, but further evidence needs to come forward.
Right. It's almost as if they're outsourcing it to Congress, really, at this point, because Congress is going forward with certain inquiries, and they're saying, okay, Congress, you can go forward with it. But the presidential role is not to direct the Attorney General on what to do. That's not what presidents historically have done. So I think it's the right move to be sending out that message that President Trump, when he's there as president, will not be to directing, whether it's Attorney General Sessions or whoever it is, directing them as to what they do. The Attorney General and they're in their role are supposed to be independent as what they're doing and not be answering to or dictated by the president.
Yeah. In agreement with this?
Yeah, I am in agreement with, like we talked about on our show earlier. Yeah. But basically the role is specific, right, because there's separate distinctions here in terms of checks and balances, and you're going to also let the Attorney General do their job. And again, if it's Sessions, he can decide and determine and review evidence as it becomes available or review the current investigations that were ongoing at the FBI prior, and then also Congress. What I don't think is going to happen is President-elect Trump, when he becomes president, saying, I'm not going to abide by this and I refuse to allow you to prosecute if evidence came forward. He's going to let the system work. He's going to let the different divisions and branches run their investigations at whatever might be ongoing.
But the AG, KG, is not completely independent of the president.
No.
And the AG still serves at the behest of the president. So if the president in meetings is saying...
Okay, he can suggest, but he cannot direct to say, I order you to appoint a special prosecutor. That is not within his purview under federal law to be able to do that.
Lisa, are we to understand that Loretta Lynch never, ever, ever listened to what President Obama wanted her to do? She was completely independent from and of President Obama?
Of course, there's sort of the soft power, right? When the president goes out and makes speeches about, I'm upset about something or other, like, justice was not done. The Attorney General is listening to the presidential speeches. And of course, there's that kind of soft power as opposed to the hard power, which is written in the rules. But let's look at it as an example in history. Nixon tried to say to his Attorney General, fire the independent counsel, Archibald Cox. Well, his Attorney General resigned over that. That did not work out very well for Nixon. So, there are laws in place. There's also sort of soft and hard power, but the president has to be aware of that political reality as well.
This shows a message that Donald Trump, President-elect Trump, is saying that he's not looking to divide the country or have petty politics or be vindictive. He is looking for the laws to be upheld, the law to be followed, and for each of these different departments to, honor their obligation.
Very, very quickly, less than a minute. So the FBI investigates, right?
Yes.
Why can't they bring the indictments? Why does it have to? Why does the Attorney General have to?
That's not how it works. The FBI is an investigative branch.
Right.
They investigate. They then bring that material over.
Proffer the evidence to the Attorney General, who then reviews it and makes a charging decision.
Based on?
Based on the facts and the investigation.
And then
only.
It goes. Correct, and not the politics.
Not the politics of it.
That's
from the That's the way it's supposed to be.
I'm
talking to you about what went on over the last 3 or 4 months with Comey, FBI, Loretta Lynch. Airplanes, correct.
We're talking about how it's supposed to work.
All right, I'll leave it right there. Kimberly, Lise, thank you so much. A quick footnote: Bill's new children's book he co-authored with James Patterson called Give Please a Chance is in bookstores now and makes an outstanding Christmas gift for kids. Also, Bill's history book, Killing the Rising Sun, remains the #1 book in the country, and you can get it for free if you sign up for a premium membership on BillO'Reilly.com. But when we come back here, in the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, the war on cops. Police departments across the country are on edge following the shootings of 4 officers in 4 cities on Sunday. At least 3 of the shootings are believed to have been ambushes against police, including one that led to the death of San Antonio police detective Benjamin Marconi.
I think the uniform was the target, and anyone who happened along, first person who happened along was the person that he targeted.
The suspect in Detective Marconi's death is now in custody facing a capital murder charge. But in the wake of Sunday's shootings, the impact of anti-police rhetoric from groups like Black Lives Matter is facing intense new scrutiny. Joining us now with reaction, former FBI agent and Navy SEAL Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, thank you for joining us. So your thoughts, first of all, our thoughts and prayers go out to these officers' families. What's causing this wave of violence against men in blue, men and women in blue?
Well, you picked the perfect name for this segment, unresolved problems, because that's what it is. I mean, the reality is you have a problem that has cause and it has escalation. There's 2 groups that are causing this, basically. You have the inner city and the breakdown of the inner city, the lack of city government involvement in rebuilding those inner cities, the lack of police tactics being upgraded as things change, and also the lack of family. Now, going with that, you have the escalation of this problem by groups like Black Lives Matter, who coincidentally fit the perfect definition of terrorist: fear and intimidation for political aim. I mean, that's what they do. So when you have groups like this that are setting out to exacerbate this problem, it's never going to get solved.
We have a couple of issues. Is it resources that's an issue? Is there ample resources for these police departments? Or is it rules of engagement? Are they being told not to engage a suspect, and maybe that's causing more harm and death to police officers? Or is it both? Or is there something else I'm missing?
It's all of that. And the problem is we've turned cops into mousetraps in a very, very dangerous area, where they just sit there and wait for something to happen, where they're not involved in the community as a whole. So this is a very large problem that has to do with the inner city more than it has to do with the cops. However, cops have their problems as well with politicized leadership, with city councils that are not allowing them to do their job. And I'm a part of a organization called the American Council on Public Safety. We tried to get NFL members to sign a petition so that they could, to stand, so that they could commit to standing during the national anthem. People are not interested in committing to change, and that's the problem. Same thing with the NFL is the same thing that's going on in the city. We need people to commit to the change, because no matter what we do with cops.
What about from the top down in these cities? Mayor de Blasio is famous for pushing back, telling his son, if you're engaged by a police officer, be careful what you say to him.
Right. Stupidity. I mean, the reality is Mayor de Blasio is a communist. Many of the people that are in Black Lives Matter are communists. And that's proven. You can look at their website. They're Marxists. These are people that use the problem that we have in the community of a lack of unity, and they use that to escalate their cause. So there's causes that are running underneath, and I think we saw the collusion of all this over the campaign over the last year, where the press was colluding with the liberal left, who also, there's many Marxists in that group, and Black Lives Matter.
All right, I have to leave it right there, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Straight ahead, no one and nothing is safe. The very best of Dennis Miller sounding off on the 2016 election insanity. We'll be right back after this. In the Back of the Book segment tonight, the very best of Miller time. The 2016 election has been a comic's dream, and it gave Dennis Miller a near endless supply of material. Here's Dennis's take on some key moments in this election cycle.
Voting. Do you think they're going to show up in November, or are a lot of people going to stay home because they don't like either candidate?
I think I'm going to vote because of allegiance to the troops. When kids put their life on the line for you, I think you got to get out and vote. Do I think there's any point to it anymore? No. I've told you, Bill, I think it happened already. When you look at the list, IRS audits against people they disagree with, deals with Iran where they get billions and billions of dollars, Bibi Netanyahu turned away at the White House, and Black Lives Matter get into the White House for meetings, sanctuary cities, Obamacare pushed through, no border. I don't want to sound like Deep Throat in the Garage, Billy, but do you really think this is all the work of little Donnie Segretti?
Can you tell me what you know? You tell me what you know.
I think there's been a coup. I think it's happened. I don't know who the next president is, but I don't think they're going to be able to undo what's been done already. I look at Hillary, who now is coughing more than Betty Davis in a Welsh coal mine, and nobody's vetting her. I think I'm getting the black lung, Bob. The press is in her back pocket. Benghazi, 30,000 scrubbed emails. It happened, man. There's been a weird takeover.
5 days left, Miller. Help me. Help me. I'm telling you. I don't know how much more I can take.
Before we get to it, Billy, before we get to it, I got to say that the concert dates with Jesse, you and I are doing great. I sent out an email blast today. It should help even more. Actually, it wasn't an email blast. I sent it to Hillary, our concert schedule, marked top secret confidential. So everybody will get it soon. Everybody will get it.
WikiLeaks will have it like that.
Well, I'm expecting to sell some tickets.
2 tickets to the gun show.
Okay, now you say that you've given up pretty much on the country ever coming back to its traditional grandeur.
Yeah, but I don't mean it'll be a smoking hole in the map,
No, but you vote because of the vets. You vote because of
it'll be like Scandinavia. Yeah, it'll be like Scandinavia.
It's cold over there, Mel. Have you been to Finland? I don't, global warming has not hit Finland. Very cold.
No, it hasn't. But once again, this stuff's going to be jammed down your throat. And I'm telling you, if she wins next Tuesday and you wake up the next day, you don't want to be gang audited. When John Podesta is the chief of staff, you're getting gang audited.
He's not a big fan of mine, Podesta. I don't think he likes me at all. Okay.
But, if he might not take the job, he might want to get back to his male modeling career on the runways of Milan.
You're gloating, Miller, about the election. You're actually gloating.
For God's sake. Yeah, okay, if you want to call it that. All I know is they're not doing themselves any good. Uppercase Democrats are now being asked to be lowercase Democratic, and they're not answering the call. I always thought it would be delish. I didn't know it would be this delish. Every day as I watch them unfold on the left, it's like Bill Mazeroski hits his homer in the 9th round 10 times a day for me. It's beautiful. And if you don't think they would have gloated on their side, are you kidding me?
No, I know.
Listen,
of course.
You think if they hate Trump now, wait till his policies start working.
No, he hasn't
What's
done
gonna
anything
happen
yet,
then?
right. It's just the idea of his policies. Now, when I was in school, it was a Vietnam era, and there were, very intense demonstrations, but there was really something to demonstrate about. Now, as you just pointed out, there really isn't any issue yet. It's just a matter of we don't like him, and we're not going to accept the election, or we're going to be disruptive even before the fact. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Here, you know what side I'm on. I would tell the kids and the Democrats in general to keep on doing what you're doing. I think you're onto something here, and I think putting Keith Ellison in charge of the DNC would be the best thing you could do. Grab this opportunity and run with it, and run way out to the left, because you're starting to look like Gene Hagen's character, Lena Lamont, in Singing in the Rain, who didn't get how over her career was the moment Al Jolson's Jazz Singer came out.
What are you going to sing, Miss Lamont?
Singing in the Rain.
Now is a good time to remind you that tickets to the Spin Stops Here live show starring Miller, O'Reilly, and Waters make great Christmas and Hanukkah gifts. You can catch them in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Reading, Pennsylvania, Omaha, Nebraska, Tacoma, Washington, and Westbury, Long Island. More information on BillO'Reilly.com. And that's it for us tonight. I'm Eric Bolling, in for Bill O'Reilly. And please remember, the Spin stops right here because we're looking out for you.